Thank you very much. Now
Yeah.
we are live. We are live.
Here we are.
Are you live?
No.
No.
I'm bad. This is just my aura.
We've been bantering back and forth. One, I hope you all agree that this particular view of JR is far superior. You really can't help with the face, but it makes the background look a lot better, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you all get to stare at my ugly mug for the next hour.
Yes. Or less, hopefully.
Or less.
Yeah. So obviously not legal advice, meaning that this is not legal advice, not financial advice. It's not any advice. It's just whatever. Two guys bantering back and forth. JR, hello. Formerly hello. Hi. And
Yo, yo.
and I decided, or I decided, and JR concurred, that we'd kind of do a summary, or kind of summarize where we were last week, where we are now, kind of the future.
See, you had to start shit because now the comments are flying. Brett says, Richard, you're right. That view makes JR's head sparkle.
It's beautiful.
Nice one, Brett. Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's beautiful. Anyway, we wanted to kind of summarize kind of where we were and where we are. I don't think it's going to be anything earth-shattering, but who knows? And then talk a little bit about Alpine and the Supreme Court, that matter that's might go to the Supreme Court. And then maybe talk about some movies from there, and maybe ended up. I wanted to talk a little bit about the crypto reserve that was announced over the weekend and kind of what happened and what it was. I thought it was kind of interesting. So, and before we jump into the proceedings, I know JR, this is JR's favorite part, I know, of the day, is whenever we do a video and I do these fantastically entertaining, brilliant jokes. And you must listen very carefully, please. You know, I entered 10 puns into a competition to see if one would win. No pun intended.
Whew. All right, number 2.
What do you call two spiders that get married?
I don't know.
Newlywebs.
Newlywebs. All right. That's not too bad.
Okay. And
did Mark send you these? That Mark from the community? Okay.
No, this is a different group.
Okay.
What did the beach say when the tide came in?
What did the beach say when the tide came in? I don't know.
Long time no see. All right.
That was good. Okay. That was a good one. Yeah, I like that one.
It's impossible, honestly. It's impossible for me to tell what makes people laugh because different things strike people differently.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, so I kind of wanted to.
Oh my God. Oh, so Brett Montgomery says, housekeeping alert, please hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks in advance. And Dan Johnson says, wait till the jokes are over to decide to hit the like button.
Well, we're not done. We're not done with the jokes.
I love it. I love it.
So, but I kind of wanted to let JR take the lead tonight and kind of, take us wherever we are, just talking about GTI proceedings, where we are, where in the future, and go for it.
Sure. So, I mean, obviously everyone knows the hearing was last week. We had that space right afterwards. I think just a little bit of context, I think people thought there was going to be more of a light switch. Right now, the judge just approved the deal. The deal was already signed by the receiver, but it just now got the stamp of approval by the judge. So basically what's going to happen over the next, I want to say 3-4 weeks is the AI-versity team is going to really take that hard look at the financials, hard look at kind of everything that's been going on. They initially saw the outside of the car. Well, now they have the keys and can pop the hood, pop the trunk, open all the doors up, start messing with stuff. So that's kind of what's happening right now. I would anticipate I wouldn't anticipate, kind of hearing anything of substance over the next 3 to 4 weeks. Now, the receiver, I believe, has a report due soon. I thought that was discussed at some point last week or the week before. So I would anticipate seeing a report from the receiver to the court. I don't know how much of the AI-versity stuff will be incorporated in, but at this point, AI-versity is getting their first real look under the hood. And so they're going to start picking everything apart, doing more due diligence. And, at some point, the receiver is going to continue to claw back assets, whether that's shares, money, or, real property. That's what they're going to be focused on. So I wouldn't expect to hear anything about what's going on with the details of the deal for, maybe the rest of the month. We might hear something at the first or second week of April. So I think everybody's expectations should kind of take it back a notch. I personally have gotten and I've seen, a lot of discussion on the short position of Alpine, what's going on with the naked short positions and kind of that focus. I think me personally, yeah, that's out there. Yeah, it's lingering, but me personally, I'm not focused on that right now. I want to hear what AI-versity and Forrester are going to do with the company. I want to see what direction they're going to start taking things, how this is all going to kind of play out. I think that there might be, I think people's expectations when it comes to Alpine and kind of screwing over the shorts. Again, I think people kind of need to bring it back a notch, kind of let AI-versity cook and do what they need to do. The best way, and you and I have often talked about this, the best way to get rid of any short position is to have a functioning business that's bringing and generating revenue. And I think that's where I hope the focus is for AI-versity and Forrester, building a solid business that's going to generate income. So those are my thoughts from last week and kind of leading up into this week.
Okay. And I will do the same after I demonstrate. So I was telling JR, and I noticed there's a lot of JRs. When I look on Twitter, there's a lot of versions of JR. It's kind of interesting. There are a lot.
There's only one JR Ewing.
There is. I was on the Gong Show twice when I was younger. I had a tremendous talent. It doesn't take long, but I'm going to demonstrate it right now. Thank you. Thank you.
That's your talent.
Thank you.
That was all right, folks.
All right. So let me talk about a little bit about the proceeding. So I was there. I kind of watched it. It was different than the first time because during the first hearing that was marred by that video presentation. And by the way, that was hanging in the background of this hearing. So early on, the judge kind of alluded to it, and it was there. It was like everybody had a little concern. Even the sheriff or the deputy was monitoring the court. But the difference between the first time and the second time was the first time there was real uncertainty. In the second occasion, it appeared that it was just a matter of form, that the judge had really already made a decision. He intended to let the deal go forward. He wanted everybody to be able to make a record. If you noticed, what happened was the attorney for the receiver, he had received objections from Mr. Rishman's counsel. Mr. Rishman's counsel indicated, I guess, had filed some objections. So when you heard, if you listened to it, you heard the attorney address a bunch of different issues. He was responding to the objections that were raised by that counsel. And if you watched the proceeding, you saw that counsel, I think his name was Mr. Herman. I think that was...
I don't remember what his name was.
Yeah. I don't know if he was formerly on the Munsters, but I believe his name was Mr. Herman. And he gave an argument on behalf of Mr. Rishman. That was his client. And I thought it was a pretty weak argument. I don't think he even had the... sometimes it's funny. Sometimes you go to court and sometimes you just got a bad case or a bad client and you got to psych yourself out to make an argument to be persuasive.
Right.
And to be honest, when I saw him because he had an opportunity afterwards. Now, again, I'm not criticizing him because I think you're dealt whatever you're dealt, but I don't really think he had his heart in it 100%. And he could have responded to other things that were said, but he gathered the judge had already decided. And, if you're going to appear in front of a judge on other matters, there's no reason and you're going to lose. If you know you're going to lose and you're going to appear in front of that same judge later on, there's no reason to piss him off any more than you are.
Right.
So I think he kind of he surrendered. And because it was going to be approved anyway. There was nobody yet there. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, and we could see it clear as day because, he started his argument off and was talking, and the judge injected one or two questions that I think when those questions were asked, you knew which way the judge was going to rule. And at that point, he basically shut down. He just kind of listened to the judge and said a couple more sentences, and then he was basically done. So,
yeah, I mean, and in summary, I think it was, under the circumstances, this is the best thing going, and there's no reason not to go for it. There's no guarantees of anything. And, kind of like what Brian said, these guys are still doing due diligence. I think John Forster said that they required a clawback of shares. I know the receiver is one of the things they're working on is a clawback of shares. So I think they have a commonality on that. Somebody asked me, and people have asked, let me finish about the hearing. So I think originally the intention was to let a lot of people speak. The judge was on a really short calendar. He's in the middle of this long trial involving, because I asked about it. Apparently it's a personal injury case involving a bunch of plaintiffs who bought this, and I may be factually incorrect, but just kind of give you like an idea of why he was hurrying. A bunch of plaintiffs who were given this water, bottled water, and apparently in the bottled water, there was rocket fuel in the water. And I guess if you drink rocket fuel, it's probably not really good for you. And no. So a lot of people got sick, and that's a part of an ongoing trial. So he had an hour to do this. And in his mind, he had already decided once the attorney for the receiver kind of addressed any of the issues raised by Richmond's counsel, there was no, I like the way it sounds better, by the way, Richmond as opposed to Reichman. So I agree with Mr. Herman. Once the judge felt he didn't really offer any dissent to anything that the receiver's counsel said in explaining. And then when Reichman's counsel had a chance to raise any additional issues, he really had no additional issues to raise. So not the perfect deal, but we're in great shape. What I was going to say is now the other issue was people have asked about trading. When can it trade? That seems like to be, I understand why people are interested in that issue. And, just to kind of put it in context, before it can trade, we have to complete the audits of of what went on. And we know that there appears to be stuff that went on that has to be looked at very carefully. And we're hoping for a completion date of March 31st, I believe. That's the date. So that would be good and a necessary step to get it uplisted again. Then, once you did whatever you needed to do, and I don't know if there's other things they need to do, again, probably repatriating the shares is something that probably has to be done, but I don't know if it has to be done before we start trading again. I don't know, but it certainly has to be done, at least to some degree. At least it seemingly has to be done before AIversity would do the deal. So it kind of has to be done. Additionally, there's other assets that are out there. There's real estate, and I know for a fact, I know this. I could say this with a certainty that there are ongoing legal proceedings, not only about the shares but about the real property, and there's legal proceedings involving getting necessary documents to maybe take certain action against certain assets. But
now, you had made the comment that you're going to try to maybe go to a couple of the depositions when they take place. Have you had any success in that
They haven't happened yet. I will try when the time comes. It's a little bit complicated because it has to be under a protective order. So so what this means is because of the agreement, and there may be like confidential information or really important information. So often the parties agree to something called a protective order, and they agree, at least subject for that purpose, for the deposition, for example, that everything said in that purpose will be protected from disclosure until a judge has an opportunity to decide if it's really confidential or should be protected at a trial or something. So this deposition is subject to that. I don't want to like give any reason to not have the deposition go forward. So
that makes sense.
Right. So I'm going to certainly find out what happens. I'm going to try to go, but I may not be able to disclose what happened until it's disclosed in a legal proceeding. And it's most likely that it will be disclosed in a legal proceeding, or the case will be over. But that's kind of how it's situated. I still intend to do that. So
let's get some of these questions, because there's some good questions piling up, and I don't want to miss them. So the first one I noticed, and I think I know what the answer is, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. Someone says, why is it able to be purchased in Canada? And I'm guessing because in the US, in order to buy and trade it right now, you have to be thank you, an accredited investor in the United States. And there are certain things that need to be met in order for you to do that. And if you can't certify that to your broker, they're not going to allow you to purchase it on the gray market, which is where it's at right now. So it is trading. It's just trading on a market that most retail investors aren't permitted to trade on. I mean, you can see the volume. I mean, it was up 8 cents the other day. So clearly someone's buying it, as well as someone selling it. If they're buying it. So it's trading. I think that's why I think that's the reason Canadians are able to purchase shares right now, because they don't have the same requirement to be met as a U.S. citizen does.
Generally, the numbers are pretty small that I
I mean, I think the volume the one day was only like 25,000 shares were traded. But I'm guessing those were primarily buys because it shot up that day.
I don't know.
The other question I'm seeing a lot, and I see this on X, is, what's going on with the dividend shares? And my short answer is I don't know. Do you have any idea?
I just don't think it's a priority for, I don't mean to belittle it, but I think it's kind of, there's multiple issues that need to get done before they ever get to that. And I think that's what they're focusing on. That's not saying they won't get to it at some future point, but that's not something they're putting attention to. They want to close, and they want to do the due diligence. If they can't close the deal, get it uplisted, get it traded, and get repatriate the up to 190 million shares, get back whatever assets they can, and then they'll deal with the next round of issues. I know that's frustrating, by the way, because I'm not one who got the dividend, but I remember how annoying it was. And I know one of the attorneys for GTII signed an affidavit or whatever, right? Which didn't seem to have much impact. I know he's been by the way, I know he's been referenced, like in discussions.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, he's been referenced. Not just him, by the way.
I wasn't dividend eligible at that point because I had sold months before that and then bought back in after the dividend, but I have no idea what's going on with it. I do recall Forrester making a comment that in due time or something like that. It's just not something that I've done any kind of research or been focusing on. Obviously, we were so hyper focused on getting the deal through. I think my suggestion to everybody is just let AIversity cook here for a few weeks. They got to do more due diligence. Like I said, they just got the keys to the car, and they can just now start really digging in and seeing what's going on. So I think people just need to kind of let their, temper their expectations here a bit. That's all.
I think Mr. Forrester has I think I've seen it. he had like a list of like tactics to deal with shorts, a whole bunch of ways to deal with shorts. Some of it was dual listing on a exchange in the Middle East.
Yeah.
But one was some kind of electronic dividend. So I don't think the concept is foreign to him. I just don't know what kind of power and authority he may have. And I don't know how it's going to play out if it gets uplisted again. I don't know. And again, unfortunately, there's too many issues that are preliminary to getting this uplisted and back trading. I was going to say is to kind of complete the picture though, after the audit and whatever else has to be done, the exchange has to act. If they're going to uplist, they're going to give it to somebody, and that could take some time too, and that's not in their control. That kind of time. So that's why we hesitate when we answer that question. Yes, sir. Yes,
I was just going to point out TMUR said the judge only approved the merger. The merger deal is not done yet, and that's 110% accurate.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, there is an order that came out of that hearing, and in the hearing, and I had a discussion with the counsel for the receiver. They're going to modify the final agreements, so it may not be material, but it's going to be there was boxes. For example, there's open boxes in the agreement, so they're going to have to fill in the boxes if nothing else. So there will be like a final order that's going to be issued by the court approving the merger. That's not the order that we just went through, but there'll be another order that's actually going to be the final order.
Here's a good question, Market Watcher. So does the judge have to approve any clawbacks?
Well, let me put it this way. It appears that the receiver discloses anything of a material nature to the court. So whether the court has to approve it or not, the court's going to be presented with it. And if the court has any problem with anything, I'm sure they will speak up.
Got it.
The judge is, formerly an attorney. His practice was he represented plaintiffs. So he's, theoretically is aligned with the retail shareholders. And, multiple times, if you listen to that last hearing, he referenced his concern about shareholders. He did it multiple times. I think, really, he does have a concern. I don't think he's going to intervene unless he thinks there's something that's bad for shareholders. Otherwise, I think he's just going to sign off on it. That's my view.
Well, yeah. I mean, you heard him reference it twice. What's the alternative here? Liquidation. I mean, he said it. He said those words twice. So yeah, he certainly had the best interests of shareholders in mind. I mean, that was the other thing we had talked about prior to this was the judge didn't necessarily have to rule that day. He could have waited, could have taken a couple of days, but he didn't. He ruled right then and there on the spot.
That's true. He was perfect.
Yep.
Any other questions?
No, I mean, Korean Moon asked about the dividend shares. We just got done talking about it here 5 minutes ago. So, rewind and watch it. So
very sweet of you. How does a mouse feel after a bath?
How does a mouse feel after a bath? I don't know.
Squeaky clean. And
yeah, that was not a good one.
Thank you. What is at the end of everything?
What is at the end of everything? A G.
Yeah. Good job. Good job. Very nice. And last but not least, before I go on to a much more serious topic, if I could find it. Oh, did you know that, by the way, did you know that dogs can't operate MRI machines, but cats can? And last but not least, really last but not least, this afternoon, I went to McDonald's and ate a kid's meal. It was so good, but his mom was furious.
Wait, what?
Yeah. You got to listen to it.
I'm checking the comments out. Look, someone just said, please stop the jokes. It was me.
Oh, it's you. Okay. All right. That's good. All right. Anything else you wanted to touch about, the future? I think John's, going to make his best effort to get this deal closed. I know the receiver is too. I think, John, seems to be very supportive of retail interests. So I think I'm optimistic for the future, in that regard.
Yeah, I don't know what else to talk about. I mean, he's got to be able to do his job now. You know what I mean? I get I get there's a lot of questions out there. There's still a lot of unknowns out there, but I don't know if there's really any answers to some of those questions yet. I don't anticipate anything of substance being told to us or happening here this week. They, like I said, they just got the keys to the car, and we know that the car really wasn't functioning, whether it was the carburetor or the fuel injection lines, nothing was working. So there's still a lot of work to do here.
Okay. So let's flip now to, if you see any other questions, let me know. Let's flip to Alpine. So tell me your position on Alpine, how you see it from a legal basis.
Well, so procedurally right now, obviously they filed the writ of mandamus to the Supreme Court, and we know the issues that they filed on because it was the issues that they had lost on at the DC court, or not lost on, but weren't really addressed by the appellate court in the DC circuit. I mean, my perspective is, if you look at things globally, we all hate FINRA with a passion. We all want to see significant change to FINRA's structure. We want to see them lose their immunity. We want more oversight. Those are all things that Alpine wants. But for as loud and as vocal as we are, really Alpine and Jarchesi, these cases, they're the ones that seem to be doing the damage, not from a legal court standpoint. They are the ones that seem to be doing the damage. That's not to take anything away from all the lobbying that the retail groups have been doing, but in the court system, it's really their own members that are hitting them the hardest. And I actually talked about this down at Pulte's event. FINRA is being undone by its own membership. I hate Alpine with a passion. I hate what they do. I hate what they stand for. Their organization is, in the business of shorting stocks, making quick bucks, and basically driving companies out of business. That is the most un-American thing to me when I sit and think about it. But from a legal standpoint, I agree with their arguments, and I agree with what they're doing. They're taking the shots at FINRA, but they're doing it from a selfish perspective. They're doing it because they know if they lose, they are going out of business. So this is really Alpine's last stand to stay in business and to stay operating and to be able to continue to do what they've been doing. You said it well the other day when I was watching. This is an organization that wanted to put a child molester as their PR representative to, whoever. That's not an organization that I would want to work for. So, but with all that said, it's hard to argue against their proposition and what they're doing. They on the DC level, that court case alone is a gold mine. And that because we've talked about it at length. That really cuts to the chase with FINRA and what FINRA does. I've often said they are an ad hoc rogue government agency in the worst sense. This is an agency that acts on their own. They do what they want. They're accountable to no one. You can't sue them unless you have a constitutional argument against them, because your regulatory argument is going to fail because of their carte blanche immunity. So the fact that Alpine was able to, really put the sword right through the armor here is amazing. And if you look at the argument and read that case, and I've read that case 1,000 times at this point, I don't see how the Supreme Court disagrees with them. I, like you, though, agree. I don't think the Supreme Court is going to take this case. I don't think they're going to take this case for a couple of different reasons. Number one, it really hasn't worked its way in. And number two, really the issue at heart is the expedited proceedings. Yeah, you've got all these other issues, but the issue that is relevant to Alpine was the expedited expulsion proceeding. I never thought that their arguments under Jarkessi and with the administrative law judges was sound in this regard, but who knows? I could be completely wrong, and the Supreme Court could say, "Yep, we're going to take this and we're going to deal with it all right now." But I just don't see that happening. I think they're not going to take the case, and they're going to be back down in the federal district court arguing that expedited expulsion and whether or not that the SEC should have been more involved in it.
Yeah. So my view is slightly different, and I think. And again, I'm not Alpine's attorney, but I think Alpine is stating that FINRA and the SEC are overreaching. They shouldn't have that power. I think the opposite it is true. I don't understand. I think FINRA and the SEC were incompetent and ineffectual, and the concern is not them overreaching. The concern is why didn't they act? And I did a video. We went through like a history of 40 years of various nonsense. And that included, the last video I did, what I literally did is I read from an SEC denial. It was like a 30-page document that it had a chronology history of the events. And that was a final order denying JR referenced some guy who tried to be a representative of the company. He had a felony history. He was denied. They requested that he be made an associate of the firm and be a representative towards regulators. That was one of his functions.
Is that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody actually mentioned a different name afterwards, by the way, which surprising to me. So somebody threw out a name. So I saw this document that referenced the chronology and this person. Somebody different said there was another person who had been arrested, but they weren't like defending the company. They were trying to correct the record. And I think it's pretty clear that this guy that's referenced in that, I think it's like October 2nd, 2022 denial, if that refers to one guy. I don't know if there's like two guys now. That's what made me occur when somebody gives me a different name. But my point is that I don't think that they overreached. I think they underreached. They didn't do what they should have done. One, I want to know why they did not. And that's really, I think, important because, if somebody violates the rules and procedures dozens of times, at some point in time, you got to kind of pull the plug, right?
Right.
Not because it's going to happen. What the outcome's going to be, right? In the end, the consumer is going to get screwed. So you got to pull the plug at some point in time. But I can't stomach the fact that Alpine would be the one that would get this overturned. I don't think the court would accept this fact pattern because I think, if I'm on the other side, I lay out their history. And even if it's not really relevant, it's not really relevant to the decision. But, people are influenced. They are influenced by things. And I think their prior record would be influential about that. But beyond that, I just can't stomach that they would prevail. Now, the issue is the Supreme Court usually doesn't intervene, period. One, they generally don't intervene unless something's at a final stage. And,
right.
And JR kind of mentioned it. And, there's a term, exhaustion of the administrative remedies, which in this case might be the agencies or the SROs. But you got to do a bunch of things before you get to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court doesn't want to hear a bunch of cases. They just want to hear cases that present certain constitutional issues that they can deal with. So they generally won't take a case like this that's not been decided. So what's not been decided? Alpine's not been expelled. Right. And I think until they're expelled, there's nothing. I don't think the Supreme Court's going to have any interest in the case because what happens if they're not expelled? Maybe they won't be expelled. And I know Alpine's argument, because the issue then is there any harm? What harm has Alpine suffered if they are not expelled? then even if
There is no harm.
the procedure is incorrect, there's really no harm. Their argument is if their constitutional rights are violated, then that's harm. It's sufficient harm. I think that's kind of a BS argument myself. I
do too.
Yeah, I think they'd actually have to be expelled and gone to the SEC, given the SEC a chance to look at it, maybe file appeal to the appellate court, and then the Supreme Court might take it. And I think what would happen, because I know when we looked at those cases, you and I, JR, there were a bunch of cases that were pending, FINRA cases. I remember it was a Kim case in the same circuits that were, similar enough that maybe they'd find a cleaner set of facts and they would take that case over something like Alpine.
Well, going back to your point, I mean, the case isn't ripe yet, and some of those other constitutional issues that they're arguing hinge on them getting dismissed. I mean, the argument about the ALJs, okay, the administrative law judges that FINRA uses to rule on these cases. And I remember reading in the brief that they had already said, well, look, Jarkessi basically says, look, these ALJs are, we're not quite sure if they're constitutional or not. They may not be. Now you have Pam Bondi coming out saying, well, they are somewhat constitutional because to remove them is next to, or unconstitutional because to remove them is next to impossible. But the problem with it is the court basically said, look, the SEC needs to be involved in this, and the SEC wasn't. And because they weren't, the SEC, to your point, what you just said, they haven't exhausted all their administrative remedies. The agency, SEC, the oversight, the superior agency, hasn't ruled on FINRA's decision yet. And I don't think the issue is ripe until they do, because to your point, what if they come back and say, you're not getting expelled? Then all of this is irrelevant, and the case isn't really ripe for the Supreme Court to look at it and to make a decision, make a determination. Yeah. So I agree with you. I don't think they're going to take it, but I just don't think they're going to take it because it's not anywhere being finalized yet.
Yeah. Other than I think the only cases that I see that they've taken, like on that, it seems like they will take election cases. If it's like an election case, they'll give it an for obvious reasons. Right. Give it some kind of expedited schedule. But otherwise, they're not interested in having a zillion cases. They might try, they might hear less than 100 cases a year, right. Which is not a ton. Again, from a human standpoint, they may want a cleaner record, not a bad record, because it's easier to justify your decision if the party that wins you think are deserved of winning. If they're not, it causes people to lose confidence or more confidence in the system.
Well, the thing that I find fascinating is, intuitively, you would think that FINRA would appeal the decision to the Supreme Court or whatever appellate court. I think it is the Supreme Court's the next level. The DC appellate court only has 3 people, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So next,
I think they asked for the entire court to consider it. Either they did or they didn't. I don't remember, but it didn't change.
Right. I couldn't figure that out either. That's why I assumed there was only 3 people on the DC appellate court, which the DC circuit is small. It's limited to DC. So that made sense to me. But you'll note that FINRA didn't appeal the ruling that basically said they acted unconstitutionally. And I think they didn't do that because they don't want to run that up to the Supreme Court. That's the last thing they want to do. Because if they lose at the Supreme Court,
they're out of business. They're out of business.
That's right. They're out of business. Well, they're out of the expedited expulsion thing is out of business, but it sets a precedent. Sets a big time precedent. They don't want to
listen. Plus, they go through the record. This is the problem, right? I'm the judge, and Alpine comes to me and says, Your Honor, I know this is going to sound like a funny argument, but we violated the rules 45 times and they did nothing. And now in the 46th time, they kick us out. Why?
Let's use the real numbers because the real numbers really make them look like fucking morons. 39,000 times they violated the cease and desist.
Well, that's just a cease and desist order. I'm just talking about individual occasions
Oh, okay.
where they were like, either agreed to charges or whatever.
Right.
I would, if I'm the court, I would ask why now? What finally happened? And then, why this is all caused by these, in my opinion, the morons from FINRA and the SEC. They didn't have to do an expedited expulsion. They could have just done a normal.
Just slap them on the wrist like always.
Just complete the process. Remember, they had done a cease and desist and they had expelled them. That was under review. Let it go through. Why don't you review it? Not wait like the problem, like in that decision about the employee that I mentioned before. That took 3 years to review.
Right.
That's absurd, especially when, like in the Alpine situation, the SEC and FINRA are claiming or complaining about all kinds of misconduct that's being occasioned on consumers. And at the same time, they're jerking around. But anyway.
Well, it is. You do bring up an interesting point. Like, why now? Like, why? Why after all these violations? Why after everything that's happened? Why now? And well, I think I just answered my own question, because if you remember what the initial charges were, they were ripping off the DTCC. They weren't charging the right amount and weren't paying their fees to the they were overcharging but weren't paying the correct fees to DTCC.
It's like a back charge or something.
That's what it is. FINRA said, hey, we're not getting our money here and we're going after these guys.
Well, also it might be like it might be the damage to consumers also was escalating, and maybe they thought whatever. Remember, they fined them a bunch of money. Not sure, but I think they got fined $12 million for years of not filing those SAR reports, the suspicious activity reports.
Right. But here's the other thing too. Like, how do you become a customer of Alpine? Alpine's not taking me as a customer. They're not taking retail investors as customers, right?
Somebody told me, I don't know the accuracy, but they said they're doing about $1 to $2 million in business per month.
Alpine is.
Yeah. Somebody mentioned that. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but that's what they mentioned. Now,
I would think for those types of hedge funds or institutions, you have to invest a certain amount. They're not taking $50,000 from any old investor. They want large accounts. So I would think.
So.
This is all pure speculation. It's pure speculation.
I would think so too. And if you're bringing in $1 to $2 million a month, I can't imagine you're going to spend like that comparable amount on legal fees. Right. That wouldn't make sense. But that's what I was told.
My God, they're probably blowing that on legal fees a month.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. But they've been obviously very active in the legal environment. I think what Alpine, in my mind, Alpine is independent of AI-versity. I don't put them on the same plane. My focus is that deal, get the business done, and then the rest, if it exists, it will kind of take care of itself. And if it doesn't exist, then we have a business that's going to hopefully flourish. That's kind of how I look at it. So anything else you want to add about Alpine?
No, I mean, you and I talk about it all the time. It's fascinating constitutional case, and we're paying attention to it.
Yeah, and it was just filed that the writ of the cert was just filed about a week ago. So it's brand new. It'll either get accepted or denied. If it gets accepted, then there will be briefing. If it gets denied, then it just goes on its merry way.
Right.
Last but not least, I had mentioned to JR that I over the weekend there was an announcement of a crypto reserve for Bitcoin. Well, actually, originally it was Cardano, XRP, and Solana. Those three were announced, and then there was a secondary tweet or X or whatever it is that added, and of course, Bitcoin and Ethereum. So I don't remember if it was Saturday or Sunday. I don't remember when that happened. I think it was Saturday. So Bitcoin went from like 85,000 to 95,000.
Yeah.
And that is called in the crypto sphere, that's called a God candle, a $10,000 candle. Over the weekend on Sunday, there was a lot of mixed feeling about it, because a lot of people were wondering, one, whether the government should be buying these type of things, should spend their money. Two, should they be spending it on XRP, Cardano, Ether, and Solana, or should they just limit it to Bitcoin? And for Bitcoin, they already have about 200,000 Bitcoin that they recovered in legal proceedings. So they can start a reserve without having to buy any. They just move them over. And I think they can do that by executive order. They don't have to, Congress doesn't have to do anything. Otherwise, I think if they want to purchase any additional crypto, they have to get Congress to sign off and appropriate the bill. But what I found interesting was that on Saturday, it went up 10,000. And by the end of today's trading, it was back basically to where it was before the information came out. And part of that was somebody, I heard this on Saturday, and it sounded like, wow, what a ballsy bet. I guess on crypto exchanges, some of them, you can get incredible leverage on them. So you can get like 100 leverage on these. Of course, you know, if that means that like the stock goes, if it goes down like a 1%, you're out, right? Theoretically. So somebody apparently bet $4 million on a Bitcoin rally on Saturday, and at 50 to 1 leverage. So people suspect that that person knew that the news was coming out, that there was going to be a big rally and was going to take advantage. The question is who that person was. I mean, I'd heard about it before the announcement. So the information I'd heard earlier in the day. So I believe that actually somebody put the money out. I'm hoping it's not an insider. I'm hoping it's not, you know, because that, just like, you know, when the Trump coin came out early on, even though the Trump administration's pro crypto, et cetera, when the Trump coin came out, and then I think the Melania coin came out, for people that were in Bitcoin, they were pissed off because they thought it kind of delegitimizes the whole thing. And then, and the ones who are serious, and I'm not like a super serious crypto guy, but I've heard enough. The ones who are super serious, they don't like that because, again, it casts aspersions upon their asset class. And then when the I guess the president of Argentina got accused of some scam involving his coin. So there, even though the current administration is very pro crypto, there's been things going on that kind of unfortunately work also to impact the crypto market in a negative way. It's interesting give and take. And it was interesting to see, and I thought it was going to happen. It was interesting to see the quick move up and the quick move down.
I just looked. That's what I was looking at. It's down almost 10.5% right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It went up. Yeah. It literally went up. It literally went up 10,000 and back down. I don't think it's like, and by the way, I don't think that's anything to be concerned about in particular. It was just amazing how just a little weekend traffic, you were talking about the amount, you know, like trading, and sometimes you don't need a boatload of trading to move the stock price. Sometimes the same with Bitcoin and that stuff. The weekend is a lower trading volumes for all that stuff, but it still moved at 10 grand in one afternoon. So anyway, I found it pretty interesting. It's also that whole area is interesting. There is a summit at the White House on Friday, a crypto summit. And one of the things that people are interested in is whether they're going to waive capital gains tax on crypto investments. Yeah. Be interesting to see. That's kind of like the rumor that's floating around. I would think, you know, from an investment standpoint, it would have to change how you would view that class. Taxes on the profit. I mean, I would think.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, anything you wanted to add?
No, I'm not well versed in it other than just watching the price fluctuations. I mean, I saw that he had announced the strategic reserve, but yeah, I mean, I just don't know enough about it to talk intelligently. So,
well, that's about a lot of subjects, right? Okay. What was that?
I said I threw you a softball there, did I?
You did. You did. You really did. Unless anybody has any other questions, we'll let you go. We just kind of wanted to update you a little bit. We'll obviously continue to update you when we have some real information. When I know more about the legal proceedings, if we hear anything, about the status of the deal, when we get more information about the status of proceedings involving Alpine, etc., we'll let you know. And for everybody out there, thanks for joining us. Be well. Take care.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Hope to see you guys soon and have a